All right, let's dive right in. We're going to tackle a puzzle that gets right to the heart of who you are. I mean, this is a question that has tripped up thinkers for centuries. Seriously, take a second. Which one of those feels right to you? Are you basically a consciousness, a mind that's just piloting a body? Or are you a physical thing that just so happens to have a mind? It seems like a simple question, but man, it cuts right to the chase of what it means to be you. So, this isn't some new question we just came up with. Nope, this is one of the big ones, one of philosophy's most enduring mysteries. And honestly, for a long, long time, the answers people came up with just felt kind of off, right? They left us feeling sort of split in two. I mean, you can trace this debate all the way back to ancient Greece. But the guy who really cemented the problem for the modern world was René Descartes, back in the 17th century. He's the one who famously split the mind and body into two totally separate things. And then you fast forward to the 20th century, and this philosopher, P.F. Strawson, shows up and basically asks, hey, everyone, what if we've been asking the completely wrong question this whole time? And here's really the core of it. Think about the way we talk about ourselves. You might say, I'm 6 feet tall. That's a physical fact. But you could also say, I'm feeling happy today. That's a mental fact. So how? How can the exact same I be the subject of these two totally different kinds of descriptions? Okay, so before Strawson came along and shook things up, there were two main answers floating around. And, as you're about to see, both of them hit some pretty major walls. So on one side, you have Descartes' idea, dualism. This is the classic ghost in the machine theory. The idea is that you're a non-physical mind that's kind of connected to a physical body. But here's the problem. If your mind is completely private, how can you ever be sure that anyone else has a mind? You can't see it. Then, on the other side, you've got this wild no-ownership theory. It says there isn't really a you at all, just a bundle of experiences and thoughts floating around. But wait, if that's true, how come my toothache is mine and not yours? See? Both of these theories end up creating more questions than they answer. And this is exactly where Strawson comes in. He looked at both of these ideas and said, you know what? They're both starting from the wrong place. They're making the same fundamental mistake, trying to build a person by gluing two different kinds of stuff together. Strawson's solution, it's radical, but it's also just so beautifully simple. He puts forward this idea that the concept of a person is what philosophers call primitive. Now, when we say primitive here, it doesn't mean, simple or undeveloped. In philosophy, primitive means it's foundational. It's the starting block. It's a concept that is so fundamental, you actually can't break it down into smaller parts. It's the ground floor where you have to start your thinking. And this is Strawson's big move. He argues that the concept of a person is one of these primitive concepts. You don't start with a mind and then a body and then scratch your head wondering how they connect. No, you start with the person. That single, unified idea, that's the starting point. Okay, so you might be wondering, how does this actually work? How can one single thing have these wildly different kinds of properties? Well, Strawson explains it with something he calls predicates. First, you've got what he calls M predicates. M for material. These are just labels for all the physical stuff we were talking about before. Things like your weight, your height, where you are in a room, anything that describes your physical body. And then you've got P predicates. P for psychological. These are the labels we use for your inner world. Your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions, when you feel happy, when you're in pain, all that stuff that describes your consciousness. And this is where it all clicks together. The big insight here is that a person isn't made of two different things. A person is a single entity that we can apply two different kinds of labels to. You're not a mind plus a body. You are just a person. And because you're a person, it makes perfect sense to describe you in both physical and mental ways. Here's a good way to think about it. Look at a coin. A coin isn't a head side that's been glued to a tail side, right? It's one single object that just has two different aspects. It's the same idea with a person. You're not a mind tacked onto a body. You're one single being that naturally has both a psychological side and a physical side. And what's really cool is that this idea also solves that old problem of other minds. I mean, think about it. You know you're in pain directly, right? You just feel it. But you know someone else is in pain by watching them, they're wincing, maybe they're crying. Strawson says the concept of pain itself is the same in both situations. We can make that leap because we instinctively recognize other people as persons, just like us, beings who have both observable bodies and inner feelings.
So, why does any of this matter? Is this just some abstract game for philosophers? Absolutely not. This shift in thinking actually has some huge consequences for how we see ourselves and really how we see each other.
Okay, so for one thing, it just makes the whole mind-body problem vanish. Poof, there's no split you have to fix if you never make the split in the first place. Second, it gives us a real, solid basis for our social lives. It explains why we can see other people as having thoughts and feelings, because we understand them as fellow persons. And finally, it really does reshape philosophy. It puts the whole complete person, not a ghost, not a machine, but a person, right at the very center of everything. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question for our time. If being a person truly means having this unbreakable link between a physical body and a consciousness, then what does that mean for something like artificial intelligence? Could an AI, a disembodied program, no matter how smart it gets, ever truly be a person in the rich sense that Strawson is talking about? Well, that is definitely something to chew on.